On Monday, she takes a walk with Johnny. On Tuesday, she has a talk with Jim. On Wednesday, she likes to dance with Tommy.
Well, hello there, ladies, gentlemen, creatures of the universe. I am Lynn Ferguson, welcoming you to the very first episode of My Index to Sex, the podcast that reveals the intimate secrets of people you're unlikely to ever meet. Now, when I say my index to sex, it's not really mine. That would be a lie, because the truth of it is that my index to sex is quite boring. Involves alcohol, probably, and stuff that I'm not going to talk about. Really, it should be called Sephe Haven's Index to Sex, because I am joined here by my pal Sephe, who is... How would you describe yourself, Sephe?
Oh my God.
Come on.
I would say I am
lovely? You'd say you're lovely? Would you say you were lovely?
I'm an ex courtesan.
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 I have to tell you, I always thought that courtesan meant someone that hung curtains. I don't really know why.
Because your accent, so you're thinking of courtesan.
How do you want your curtains done? Mind you, there is probably a crossover. Describe a courtesan. What does a courtesan do if they don't hang curtains, which is a terrible waste of a word, I have to say.
Did hang curtains once when a car tore them down and we had to put them up, but that was the only time I hung curtains. So it wasn't really a courtesan, it was a courtesan hanging big on courtesan just that one day.
You're more of a blinds person, more of Venetian blinds or a shutter.
It's right.
So Sephe, the point is with Sephe, aside from not being a curtain person, she has had many sexual encounters. Would you agree?
I've had so many that I'm embarrassed that I have this 3 boxes of index cards that full of those weren't even all of just clients because I had to keep track.
So you see, Sephe keeps a box of index cards of each person, well, not every person that she's had a sexual encounter with. And in each episode of My Index to Sex, which really should be called Sephe's Index to Sex, we'll take out one of those cards and we will talk about that encounter. And you, listener out there, will get to hear about the sexual practices of a complete stranger, which is kind of awesome. So who would we be talking about this week? Have you picked a card, Sephe?
Well, I thought, well, since it's our first time, I should just blindly choose. So I picked the L's. I went to all the L's, and went through those, and we can just read through some of the things and pick one we want to stick to.
Well, can I just ask you before you start, because this is fascinating. Would you say that there were more clients of one letter than another? Like, say, do you get more Marks or more M's or more... I'm saying Mark because my husband's called Mark and he's recording this, and literally when I said his name there, did you see, Sephe, how he completely shat himself? He was like,
so proud.
Oh my God. Already he's slightly uncomfortable with this whole setup. But
would his name be Mark Tweedle? Because I have a card. No, I don't.
No, I have that card. I can tell you all about that one.
Yeah, there is actually. I picked the L's because your name begins with L, so I thought. But you're not in here. But yeah, there are certain letters that have. You know, when you open an index box, there's some that are just no. There's nothing, like X has nothing, kind of thing. But I do have an X, but not just in my life, but in the cards. And but yeah, L's were not thick. There wasn't that many L's, so that's why. Okay, well, let me just describe how the card is laid out.
Oh, that would be good, yeah.
And the reason I made these cards was because at the time I was an independent escort, which meant there was nobody keeping track of things but me. So if a client called, I wanted to take all the information I needed. And while I saw him, just afterwards, I would write down information that I wanted to remember in case he called me again. And so then if he did call me again, he would leave a message and I would look in my little index box and see if he was there and if I saw him and if I had any issues with him or anything I needed to remind myself to know. Or if he was a very bad boy and he was blacklisted. Because escorts had, the only people that take care of each other were each other. We kept each other safe. So we would call each other, even if we'd never met, and say, no, don't see Mark Tweedle. Is a bad man and will steal from you and will hurt you and whatever. And he's a police officer.
But also, don't see Mark Tweddle because his wife is Scottish and fierce, and she would kill you.
Well, we did have some wine fall, but yes. And I would just say, I'm going to refer you back to your husband. That's all. So that's why we have these cards. So there was also this blacklist box of men that. So I would check the cards before I saw somebody. So on each card is the man's name and phone number, which I should reach him. And then it would say, at the time, in order for me to screen somebody, I would need to call them back at work through a switchboard to make sure they worked there. This is pre-cell phone days.
All right.
So, I'd call them, they'd say JP Morgan, and I'd say, is Bob Tweedle there? Everybody's Tweedle. Well, everybody's going to be Tweedle. And stuff. And so they would get me Bob Tweedle, and I would know he really worked there. So that would be an information on the card, and however he wanted me to say. So I would be Sally Mae from, Sally Mae Cookies or whatever, calling for Bob Tweedle. Anyway, so that's the cards. And then below I would put information. So this is for instance, I won't say his name, but it begins with an L.
Lionel.
Okay, Lionel.
Lionel.
Let's say Lionel.
Yeah.
Architect, he drives into the city. He has a begrudging personality.
He sounds like a Lionel. That so totally sounds like a Lionel to me. Sorry, Lionel.
He said I look older than I advertised, which is really not the thing you want to say to a woman that you're about to sleep with.
No.
He said I looked older than my photos. He has no conversation. He doesn't like my candles, my music, or my magic. Well,
I think I might have dated Lionel before I met him.
I did too. I wrote, he goes 2 times, which means that he comes twice during the session.
Begrudgingly. Does he begrudgingly come?
I don't
think when he was like, oh, I'm coming. Oh, for God's sake, I'm coming. That's how you...
Damn it, look what you did. And usually I write that down for myself to know because I have 2 hours to fill. And if he's going to come 2 times, I need to fill the 2 hours. So I'm going to remind myself that he could come at the very beginning and then we could do some things while he recovers and then he could come again at the end.
Right. I don't have men's machinery. This may surprise you, and it's never been a thing I've asked, really. But how long does it take, knowing what you know about men's machinery, because you probably know quite a lot about it, I would have thought, how long would it take a gentleman, like how old was Lionel? Was Lionel a younger man or...
Don't have it down here. At that time, the majority of my clients were in between 30 to 50.
Right.
But I did have men in their 20s and I did have men much older.
Yeah.
But the majority were 30 to 50. So here it says he was born April 1st. So April Fool's Day.
That's probably why he's angry. Do you not think that's why he's begrudging? Because I've often thought that if you're born on April Fool's Day, then you'd go to people, hi, it's my birthday today. And they go, ha, 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 April Fool's. And you go, no, really, it is my birthday. And they go, yeah, look at you. And then that would, over a period of time, I'm inviting you to my birthday party. I'm not coming. It's April the 1st. I know you're not. Like over time, that would be the thing that maybe made Lionel begrudging.
It could have. I mean, he's also an Aries, so he's quick to temper, Why? Aries are very nice people, but they're also
quick. Aries are adorable people. I think you'll find Aries are the most adorable signs of the zodiac.
You're the most adorable Aries I know. I have one of them that's also adorable, but he's married and says, he wears, tzitzis. Do you know what a tzitzi is?
No, what's a tzitzi?
Okay, it's a conservative Jewish thing.
Right.
And it either means, now I don't remember anymore. Now somebody's going to call you and say, she doesn't know what this means.
Hey, honey, can I just tell you that if people listen to this podcast and the only thing that they've got to complain about is that you didn't know what a tzitzi is, I don't think we're doing our job properly. I think we're probably not doing our job.
I think it's the fringe that comes out of the vest, or it's the curls that's on the side of the face. But I think it was the fringe. The fringe down there. So the fringe.
The fringe down there.
But I turn over the card.
Do you know what completely went through my mind there? Because we've been talking about it earlier. Because when you went, the fringe down there, I was like, so sort of like curtains. Curtains, like a fringy curtain over the business area. Like that kind of fringe.
vertical blind. Yeah, that's right. Vertical blind are his teetsies. And then I turn over the card, and on the back it will tell me what date I saw him and how much he paid. And my price was always the same, but if it was a different price than what's on here, it was because he had more hours, or I saw him way before I changed my prices, or things like that. So
Yeah.
I would know that. And that's how the cards work.
That is awesome. See, the thing about Lionel, there's so many questions I have just about that. Right, so first was the machinery. He liked to come twice. Is it easy to make a gentleman come twice? I mean, to come twice within the space of
2 hours.
Or does it depend on the gentleman? Is there a system that you can do to make sure? I suppose not everyone wants to.
Well, I think that's why I wrote down how many times, because usually I would, because I have a theater background, I sort of arranged the 2 hours to be long and beautiful and sensuous and drawn out like a theater thing, so that the gentleman would come once towards the end, and that would be it. But some men knew that they came very fast. Wow. And they couldn't hold out. And so they knew that. And so they would tell you, they'd say, well, I can come once and then I can come once later. They know their stuff, they know their stuff.
I have a particular vision in my head of Lionel coming in saying, you look a lot older. Oh, there we go. That's the first one. Then like the system. Again, why he's begrudging. He just has to say.
Well, men were so happy to be there, and I was happy to see them. So this really stood out. Apparently, that's why I wrote it down, for somebody to come in and be so, I don't like your candles, and I don't like your music, and I don't like your magic, and you look really old. And it's like, oh, good. I can't wait to spend 2 hours with you. I can't wait to put my mouth on your privates. What a great way to. I'm sure he does well in real life. Plenty of things going for him.
Lionel sounds like what I would predict somebody who paid for sex would be like. He wasn't a typical client then, in that sense?
No, he was really unusual. I'll just say this. In my real life, when I dated, I met a lot of Lionels. And so when I was working, it was such a pleasure, because men, I don't know how they were in their real lives. I don't know how they were at the law firm in their suits, or in their suits at the, on the trading floor, or I don't know how they treated their wives. All I know is I met every man in his boxer shorts, and they were sweet and wonderful and gentlemen to me, and brought me flowers and lovely things and bottles of champagne and wine. And we had a lovely 2 hours together, and I was treated like a princess, and I treated them like they were my prince. And it was a beautiful time. So for somebody like that to come in and treat me that way, after I set up, hundreds of flickering candles behind a velvet curtain with music that was planned, and, it was a very sensuous time. For them to be that way was really unusual. So that's probably why I wrote it.
Yeah. And you saw him twice?
No, it's that I only saw him once.
Oh, well, do you know what? I think you did well there. I think so. It's that belligerent double comer. I think most women would say a belligerent double comer you only really want to see one night. One night is enough.
There were a lot of belligerent double comers before I went independent.
Really?
Yeah. So once I went independent, I could control who I wanted to see. But when I worked for an agency, which was all you could do back in the olden days, when I was very young and did not look old. But you had to see who you were sent to see. And it was usually you were sent out for an hour through the agency. You went to wherever you went to. And if you extended the time, if the gentleman wanted you to stay an extra hour, that was extending. Or if he called back for you, that was repeating. But really, I didn't have a whole lot of control over who you wanted to see. So I got to choose who I wanted to see and if I wanted to see them again or not. So obviously, Lionel didn't choose to see me again. The rude double comer.
I think that was a good thing. I think, I do want to ask you though, because I think it's such, like, you and I have been friends for a long time, right? But, so I know, we know a lot about each other, right? But I'm thinking about the listener out there. The question, before I met you, I'd sort of assumed that women who were courtesans were dragged into the business kicking and screaming. Like, I have a sort of Starsky and Hutch Huggy Bear thing going on about, like, that's how it would be. How did you start in the business? Like, were you dragged into it kicking and screaming? Is that what happened?
In my head, I was, but I wasn't. In my mind, before I went in, I was like, I thought the same thing you did. Because you see these TV shows and, girls on the corner, they're strung out on drugs and they're living in holes in the walls and, they're smoking things and
crack.
Yeah, all sorts of bad images. And I was scared. I had graduated after 9 years of school, college and graduate school, and I had so much debt, so much student debt. So I had student loans and credit card debts and everything else. And at one point, I was a waitress. Well, I was always a waitress. And I just kept getting, like all waitresses will tell you, you just kept getting body parts in the food. My boobs were always in the mousse or always in the soup or always somewhere. And I think I needed a job where, boobs with food went together. Something. So,
you know what? Even if you put your boobs in the food, I bet you that would not have impressed Lionel and his begrudging.
Yeah. No, he was not impressed by magic.
So what led from...
What happened was, I'm sorry, So I saw an ad in a paper we had called The Village Voice back in the olden days.
In New York then? Was it New York?
It was New York. Yeah, that's right. And there was a paper that it said, girls, earn $1,000 a week. Escorts wanted, no sex involved. Wow.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay. Well, I didn't know what an escort was. And $1,000 a week back then was probably how much I made a month. So to make it in a week was really astonishing.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, gosh, is this you just escort men to places? Like you escort them to charity balls and you escort them to a picnic in the park and you escort them to dinners. I don't know. I thought, that's lovely. I go on dates for free, all the time. And the men want to have sex. So this is better. So I went and found out sex was involved.
Yeah.
But I ended up at a really good agency, not knowing that it was a really good agency. But it wasn't anything like that. It was run by this incredibly strict but really smart woman named Susan, who I will admire for the rest of my life. And she had this group of women that she hired, and she taught us how to not steal from her, first of all. And she sent me on my first call, and it was safe and quick and wonderful. And I was like, I had $200 in an hour.
Yeah.
And I was like, if this could change my life pretty fast, I'm tired of being like a poor person in America who people go, we don't treat poor people here very well. I'm not sure they treat poor people anywhere very well.
It changed things for you in a lot of ways, though, because from that moment, I guess, from the moment that you do the first, hanging the curtains for money sort of thing, that there is a change in what people will think about you. Did you notice that? Were you aware of that then, or when did it come?
Yeah, it was pretty fast, actually. The minute I started to get money in, and the phone calls stopped coming in, the collection agencies that yelled. And because in those days, it wasn't regulated. So they could call you constantly at your landline, and that was all that would call you over and over and over again. And so wonderful. That stopped immediately, which was great because I started to pay that off. I started to be able to afford clothes, which was nice, nice clothes. So that changed the way people saw me. I wasn't dressed like a ragamuffin anymore. Yeah, I mean, as much as you can imagine any business and money changing anybody.
Was there ever a moment when you went, oh, I'm not sure about this?
Oh, always. Every day of the first 4 years, I kept saying, this is the last week. I'm breaking out. This is it. Because I didn't want to grow old in this business. And I was like, I don't want to be thought of as an old fucker. What did you do with your life? I was a prostitute. Nobody wants to think that.
I wonder, though, that I think in life, there's probably quite a lot of people. I was a blue coat at Pontins. I know that you won't know what that is, but basically you force people to enjoy themselves without sex, right?
What is that? No,
Well, you,
explain that.
you wander about going, are you having a good time? It's like we have these holiday camps, like camps where I know, Sephe, it sounds barbaric, and you know what? It totally is.
Well, no, tell me, what is it?
Well, these people go on vacation.
Okay.
Right? This is just so you know, listener, this is a moment that I never thought would happen in my life, and you are part of it. I never thought that I would be in a position where I would be explaining holiday camps to a courtesan who is my friend. That was not a thing I foresaw in my future, but lo and behold, here it is.
Here we are. Well, wait, so this is in Scotland?
No, well, it was in England that I did it. So I had to wear a uniform, and it's these places that people go for holidays. They rent little chalets. So, I mean, vacations is how you would say it. Not holidays in America is like Christmas and stuff like that. Vacations is like the 2 weeks where you go away a year. So they would take their families there, and I would be the person that would do, I was lifeguard at the paddling pool. I would run the donkey derby. I would
Donkey derby.
Listen, I am not getting into explaining a donkey derby to you.
Well,
in this
listen,
episode.
you
I've
have
already
to
got it.
I need to get into donkey stuff later, so you might explain your donkey, I'll explain my donkey, then we'll both have donkeys.
I'm calling you out, lady, and you know why? Because we are doing a podcast about the index cards of guys that you've had sexual encounters with under your desk, and yet a donkey derby is a weird thing.
Yes. And the guys were not under my desk. The index under my desk. I never had sex under my desk.
Pedantics. Anyway, my point is, when I was working at the holiday camp doing a donkey derby, which I will explain to you at another time, maybe another episode, maybe I'll never explain, maybe I'll keep it mysterious. There were points there, though, Sephe, where I would go to work and go, this is absolutely the last week I am doing this. Yeah. Like, I think that's a universal feeling. It's one of the things that I love talking to you about this stuff with, because I think it's been made so mysterious. And yet, actually, and I wonder how many people who listen to this have had jobs in their life where they've gone, no, I hate this. This is the last week, right? So I think that's a normal part of it, really.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I was just talking to somebody who was saying just yesterday about how burned out he was at his job. And so I said, well, whenever you get burnt out, if you're not going to quit, then what I did when I was an escort, and I would have those days when I was so burnt out, I just could not suck another dick. But, I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I would say to myself, remember when you waitressed, and remember and I would just bring back all the other jobs that were so difficult and so, that made me so sad and were really worse in my mind. If you can imagine waitressing being worse than that.
I can. Yeah.
So, and then I would think, oh, okay. And I get this renewed spurt of energy, and then I would really be good at, whatever I was filleting at that moment.
So, well, I think, but that's a point. What do you do when there's an off day? Because some days you just phone it in. Like in work, you just have to go and phone it in. Like if you go to the Home Depot to get say you go to the returns desk at the Home Depot. Now, occasionally you'll get people who are like really into sorting out your returns. They're like, why, you didn't like this colour of paint? You're like, no. And then they sort it out and it's magic. And then other times you get people and you know that they just don't want to be there. Now, you can do that at the Home Depot, but I don't know that you can do that when you're charging, I don't know, $500 an hour or whatever. What do you do? Is there a technique that you do?
It's such a good question, because I think it's part of what separates the wheat from the chaff. No, but it's part of, remember, because you're a performer and I'm a performer, and we never get on stage and phone it in. Or I never got on stage. You could have the flu, you could be dying, and you never phone it in. You just live in the moment. So that's what I would do. You just key in, and then when you leave that man, or when that man leaves you, you take your downtime, and you collapse and let it go, and then the next time you gather it up again and you show up. Although I had a friend who was an escort for a while, she was hilarious because she didn't care one bit if she phoned it in. And there was one time I was with her with a man, because sometimes men would call for 2 people.
Oh.
And so he was laying in the center of us with his eyes closed, and TV was on and the things were on and bright lights. And she and I were messing around down there with him, and he was just enjoying, and I don't know, we were just kind of doing stuff. And she looked up at the TV and grabbed the clicker and changed the channel. She put it on, like, there was a TV station called Nick at Night, and he had it on the news, and she changed it to Nick at Night and went on seamlessly watching, you know, I can't remember, I think it was Dobie Gillis or something. It was an old TV show. I'm like, he could have known. And she's like, oh, he was busy, you know.
Also, he might have found that sexy. He might have found that sexy. I wonder, I keep wanting to go back to Lionel. The thing that I'm wondering is, see when someone only sees you once, do you take offence? You know that way where even if you go out, if you're dating somebody and they only see you once, even if you thought they were a complete douchebag, you go, what do you mean they only wanted to see me once? Did you ever take offence?
It was such a cure for that, you know, because when I was dating, I was just like, I was like, oh, he was such a jerk, and why didn't he call me? Why didn't he call me? And it was hard. Yeah, your ego was sort of bruised and sad. But when I was with these guys, very quickly, there were so many that it didn't matter. And it was really, sure, I would wonder if I really liked somebody and I didn't see them again. I'd think, I wonder if I did something wrong. I wonder if I said something wrong. But usually that kind of turnover, I don't have time to think about it or worry about it. And it was really good for me in the long run. As a woman, my self-esteem when I first was in the business was very small, very low. And when I left the business, my self-esteem was with men was almost impenetrable. You know, I was like, oh, well, you know, and if he didn't like me, a guy in real life, I would think, well, you know, that may be because he really likes donkeys behind closed doors. I don't know. I can't blame it on me. You know,
or with Lionel because he just doesn't like anybody.
Yes.
How many clients would you see in a day? Because you said it takes 2 hours, these sessions, right?
Yeah. So when I was in my best time, when I was one of the top courtesans and I saw people in my apartment, I would usually try to space it apart, 3 people in a day. So I'd get up really early and go get my hair done, you know, blow dried, and then put my makeup on and get ready for the first person. Maybe they'd be from 12 to 2. And then I'd give myself a couple-hour break and see somebody from 4 to 6. And then I'd take a couple-hour break and see someone from 8 to 10. And usually the last person would go a little overtime. And so that would be, you know, a little more time. But and sometimes, so usually it was 3 if I could, and sometimes more. But
wow. You must have about 9 o'clock, you must be going, oh my God, like enough with the penises. Like you have like just enough penis. You're like, oh my God. Like, you know, because penises, like it depends really on who you're with. But on their own, like independent of a body really or a personality, they're not really the most attractive thing. I mean, I know people draw them a lot and sculpt them and everything, but I mean, on their own, they're not like a rabbit or something like that, or like a little lamb. If you look at a little lamb wandering on its own, you're like, oh, lovely little lamb. But you don't really do that with a penis, do you? So like by 9 o'clock, when you're like, oh my God, put it back in your pants. No.
Well, I very rarely had penises show up on their own. Their owner. A few would knock on the door. They'd be like, oh, I've heard this is a good apartment to visit. Where's your daddy? He's at home with mommy. Does he know you're out? No, he's watching TV.
Did you find that you have, you probably, I wonder, you know, do you draw? Do you draw? Are you an artist?
I do draw, but I don't think I'm a very good artist.
I'm just putting this to you, right, as an idea, right? Just as an idea, because you've got 2 books out already, but this could be another book, which is it could be a picture book, and it could be penises I have known, because you must know more about penises than most other people. I would have thought. I don't know. Would you consider that?
No, I would not consider that. You're so weird, Lynn. No.
You know, I don't know what it is, but after this particular episode, I'm coming out with going, God, I'm the weird guy.
Yes, you are.
I worked at a holiday camp, donkey derbies. I don't like curtains.
You want to draw penises. You think that they're wandering around on their own.
No, but I think that you are an untapped treasure here. What you must know about the variation of penises is quite extraordinary.
Oh, I don't know.
So we're coming towards the end of this particular episode, right? Because it's episode 1, so it's a little weird, listener. We'll have more form and be more organised in our next episodes, won't we? No.
No.
Maybe. But we're coming towards the end of this episode, and I firmly believe, and I know that you do believe as well, Sephe, that in each experience there is a learning, there is understanding. What would you say, if anything, you learned from Lionel, or what would you say that Lionel learned from you?
Oh my goodness.
I know, right? As if sleeping with Lionel wasn't hard enough. Now you have
I think looking back, if you make me say something.
go on, say something, Lerny, so that we can say that we're like Gandhi or something like that. We can go, yes, technically we're talking about penises, but we're also talking about the learning experience. So what would you say?
I guess I would say I learned once again not to take it personally how a man reacts to me, because he could be a Lionel. You know, he could just have lots of issues. He just might be one of those people. And so if I would have met him in real life and had a date with him, I would have gone home very depressed and thought, well, you know, he told me I was older looking. He was begrudging. He was, didn't like anything up here. And I would think, oh, I need to change myself. But because he did it as a client, I just sort of put it into my file book and went, what can you do?
I love that. I do love that, because what you're saying is something I'd never really thought about before, which is that, when you're wandering through your life and you meet somebody like Lionel, right? And you go, God, what have I done wrong? What did I do? Yeah. And it's always the go-to thought. And then you're like, God, maybe just Lionel, no matter where he goes, is begrudging. Because you have to really be a begrudging human being, really, if you get to come twice in 2 hours and that still doesn't make you happy. Do you know what? That still doesn't make you happy. So we have, how many cards do we have in that index box?
Probably like 10,000 or more.
Ah, there we go. Right. We have many, many cards in the index box and many, many stories yet to tell. But until next time.
She's the sweetheart of 6 other guys.
You have been listening to My Index to Sex, produced by Ferdal LLC. The music was performed by Chesney Hawkes, and you can learn more about Sephe Haven at sephehaven.com. Go to mitspodcast.com to check out the show notes for more details, including how to stay in touch, give feedback, and ask questions. All the best.
Sunday's my only time with that bozo of mine, 'cause she's the sweetheart of 6 other guys.